So Mark, finally here in Halifax.
Yes.
We made it.
I know, it's been a while.
Yeah, and so happy to finally be here, and thank you also for hosting us here in your beautiful place. And yeah, we talked a lot about, we got connected through building up new society and building up new cities, new villages, and what is important in that. And I know you're building on a whole new system, a new financial system. And can you tell a little bit more about it? So why do we need a new financial system?
Well, that's a really great question. And if we take and step back from the thousands of years of development in how mankind has established forms of economies and things like that, it's a very basic, simple formula. And we moved from bartering value to each other to something a little more stable so that we could expand that. And eventually, at some point, it got corrupted. Mm-hmm. And money turned into debt. Mm-hmm. Now, to the degree that there's nothing wrong with debt, but there's something wrong with debt that is destructive. Mm-hmm. So if you look at an economic system like nature is always 100% precisely, exactly balanced. Mm-hmm. There is no debt in nature. Mm-hmm. Okay.
No, trees don't have debts. The bees neither.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, and what I did is I stepped back and I said, what is the most perfect banker in nature? And believe it or not, it's really simple. It's mushrooms, the mycelial network.
Okay.
So the mycelial network, it connects and it actually integrates with the root system of plants and things like that. Yeah. And it uses that to transfer sugar and water and carbon that other plants need. And it really is nature's absolutely perfect banker. So in establishing a framework that is always well balanced, from a human perspective, one of our biggest obstacles is how do we trust each other? Mm-hmm. Great book by a friend of mine called Liars and Outliers will give you the whole history and story of how humans establish forms of trust and why that's important. So what I ended up doing over the years is working to create a digital framework by where trust becomes possible, meaning that we can responsibly measure things and events and, how much water, how much energy, those kinds of things, and we can keep track of it. And we have seen since 2008 the emergence of digital currencies like Bitcoin grow up from the original concepts, which was called digital gold. Mm-hmm. And we've experimented. And of course, we've also learned the fallacies of letting open digital systems be hacked and people lose. I mean, there were $2 trillion worth of loss in just the digital currency world here over the last several. Mm-hmm. That's not fun. I mean, if you trusted your wallet to be in that blockchain and somebody comes along and scoops it out from behind you, that means it's no longer trustable. Mm-hmm. So we had to solve that problem. Now, my wife would tell you that my English is my second language. Math is my first language. And as a result, with colleagues, I've been able to, over the years, develop a highly respected and tested method of cryptography for not only scaling, but also in a way that is adaptive as new systems start to come online. For example, we all hear about quantum computing, which is an extraordinary way of mimicking nature again, and how in a quantum computer we can do hundreds of thousands or billions of times more calculations than we could in a binary computer environment. So the math is new math. It's not based on the old 1930s, 1950s math that we use for public-private key pairs and secrets and those kinds of things. It's a new type of math. We call it rotational keyless encryption. And it allows us to essentially create an environment that is constantly in motion like nature is. So when you're building out a stable economic system, part of what you need to be able to do is to deal with literally as close to real time as is computationally possible, the ability to do transactions, as opposed to our current debt-based economic system, which maybe does a settlement, once at the end of the day, or maybe twice a day. And that just makes everything slow. And aside from the whole issue of fiat currency versus asset-based currency, which is a whole nother gambit, it just makes things slow. And so people that recognize this are driving towards finding these kinds of solutions. But one of the things that I've tried to do is also like nature, it's how do we look at the human side of this thing? Because economies are based on us. I mean, the birds don't care about money. No.
And the trees neither.
The trees neither. They don't care about it at all. They care about it when money is coming and tearing them down, I suppose. But so our economy is built on people. So if we don't build economic and cultural and social systems that recognize human frailties as well as human strengths, again, we're not going to be sustainable.
And so, Mark, you developed a lot of things in the past, isn't it? You worked on a lot of apps we're currently using, isn't it? Maybe you can give a little bit explanation so people have some background about you, where you come from. Why do you feel called to develop this financial system?
Yeah, so the session-initiated protocol, which everybody talks about, came from a computer science group out of Columbia University. And a couple of my engineers and myself got permission. We worked with the lead out of the university. And in one weekend, actually, I rewrote SIP protocol, period. And again, in partnership, the idea was to make that an open published standard so that computers and applications and devices could all talk to each other. And it did. It became a standard. I know that some product managers at Cisco and Nortel and all the big companies that were hoping to build their proprietary voice solutions probably were really pissed at me for releasing that technology into the open. But it was important not to take ownership of something so important to the world.
So you're a big lobbyist for open source?
Open source has a place, but open knowledge and open information, I think, is the best place. I think when you start getting into things like the operating system that's running the airplane you're flying, or the surgical room at the hospital, or your system of money, I don't think those need to be open source. As a matter of fact, quite the opposite.
Yeah.
There needs to be responsible parties and accountability to how those systems are operated. And that gets us into something that I've named the Lydian. And by the way, Lydian was a country which was part of northern Turkey, where the first minted coin was actually ever created.
Okay.
And so in homage to that Lydian coin, I created the Lydian blockchain framework. and eventually the Lydian token, which is not a currency. It's a synthetic that has the benefits of asset value merged in with the security and reliability of a digital system. So now you have potentially a new trusted, safe, and secure method for people to transact and to enter into agreements with each other. I mean, imagine you and I could enter into an agreement to co-author a song, and our digital rights could be put into a smart contract, and when our songs went into the world, that digital contract would automatically harvest the value of our song. I mean, that would be a good example of some of the things that are possible.
And as I understood, it's also it's not a stable coin in the sense that it's stable and linked to another currency, which is often unstable, as we can see nowadays and in the past too. So, because a lot of coins, when there are stable coins, they're linked to
they're linked to something
currency, like the euro or the dollar.
Fiat currencies, for a brief review, fiat currencies are currencies that have no supporting value. The value
Maybe
is
just an explanation for people who are listening for the first time in the world of currencies, that fiat means the dollar or the euro or other paper. The currencies we know mostly are...
For the benefit of those that may not have that background, let's talk about what money is, okay? The Chinese stabilized value around silver, and the European stabilized value around the gold. And gold took effort, and you could know that work had to be put into it, and it was a limited resource. So you could trade knowing that value would be there. It was something you could touch. Well, in 1971 or 2, I believe, Richard Nixon, facing a collapsing dollar, which was based on assets, gold and silver, created the first global reserve currency in the U.S. dollar by making the U.S. dollar backed by a U.S. Treasury note or a sovereign guarantee, not by assets, which is great. Now you can have all this money, and if your government needs more, they can print it. The U.S. military was dominant in the world. We could trade the value of our global military protection with other nations, and everybody would agree to use the U.S. dollar to buy and trade gold, telecom, products and services globally. Until, of course, somebody figured out that I could overprint how much money I've got. And, of course, the U.S. dollar is now turned into a fiat currency, meaning that it's only based on what I say it's based on.
On what we believe that is told on television or in the media, probably, too. Because it can quickly change when something is told in the media, isn't it?
Exactly. But if you go back to the original barter system, when we traded a bushel of wheat, it was based on a lot of things. I might trade a bushel of corn with a bushel of wheat, and everybody'd be happy, right? But that's not a way to make computers work, okay? So we're now experiencing the impact of overprinting our money because of the pandemic. It's destabilized the global exchange currency, the U.S. dollar. So other sovereign nations who see that destabilization see it as a weakness, and so they're trying to take advantage of that. And I understand that. But in the history of man, from the Romans through today's time, there has never been a single fiat currency that has ever survived, ever, never. It's like, I know that if I burn that candle, it's going to burn out and it's going to go away. And the U.S. dollar, the euro, Canadian petrodollar, the Aussie dollar, they're all fiat currencies. They all, at some point...
They don't represent anything,
right.
Only a belief.
Right. And beliefs, because of human nature...
are volatile.
Are, full of...
Yeah. So if we believe that we cannot buy food from our fiat currency, from our amount of money we have, we will not be able to do that.
Exactly.
Isn't it? Exactly. And that's what I feel that you want to change. You want to create stability around commodities, about, let's say, a basket of food you would able to buy always, which is linked to the lithium coin.
Yes, so it's I call it pegging the value to something that we all recognize as a commodity. So we write an algorithm which we publish. The algorithm says, so much of this, that, and the other thing. You add it all up and you get the value of a lithium coin. Simple as that. Now, that is open source. That's true open source. Because if you look at gold, as an example, the only thing that stitched all these currency and sovereign countries together was they knew what the weight of an ounce of gold was, and that value was their exchange. That is true decentralization. Nobody controls the value of gold because we're all bartering for our various value against it. And so that's my solution to decentralization, not giving hackers access to my core network, which they then go in and steal hundreds of millions of dollars from, right? It should be a network that's trusted. You should only have access to the network through trust. And we have the mechanics to do that.
And how do you make sure that hackers cannot do anything with the coin you developed? Because you're a hacker too, in the sense that you can hack systems and you get everywhere if you want to get there.
Yes.
Yeah. So then how do you make sure that people cannot hack in your coin?
Well, first off, it's called a Jacopia protocol that I wrote back 20 years ago, which is a derivative of Genie, which a Java-based world. Bill Joy and the crew down in Sun wrote this quite some time ago. Jacopia is a protocol that requires policy and authority. So when a device, and we actually use versions of this today. So your Google Pixel smartphone or your iPhone or your Samsung phone, they've got a secure bootable environment, etc. But specifically Google, which leveraged itself from the early embassy system, which became the TPM, or the Trusted Platform Module, which was a security chip that is in most of your devices today. I mean, you probably can't buy a computer today that doesn't have a TPM chip in it. What it is it utilizes that framework. So now, on a semi-quantum basis, each device has its own analog fingerprint. Even though they may have replicatable digital systems, there is an analog aspect of it which makes it quantum. And it can't be replicated. So we can utilize that non-ability to replicate as a secure mechanism to identify a device. And if somebody goes and alters the device, it blows up the trust. The network says, oh, you've been altered, I can't talk to you anymore. Or whatever policy you choose to put on it.
Yeah.
So in effect,
there are solutions.
There are solutions, yeah. And somebody else will come up with better solutions. This, to me, technology is like a revolving door. It's never truly stable. It just evolves like we do. We evolve, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, if you go to look at how things grow just over my lifetime, I mean, you know, I grew up flying on propeller-driven aircraft, and now we're flying jets, and now we're taking, you know, people and shooting them up into space and back. I mean, that's in my short lifetime. So things evolve. So the process here is, how do we work with people to create a resilient or a nimble community and business environment? I love to go back to some work that Jonathan Dorr, the founder of Kleiner Perkins, always used to say, which is, he would refer to this investment model as a keiretsu. And a keiretsu is named after a Japanese model which was used to help rebuild the Japanese economy after World War II, where the various industrial and other businesses took a part of ownership in each other. So if I know that, you know, I'm Google and I've got some cross ownership with SpaceX, then we know that we're going to work together to make our networks more supportive. And I do what I do well, and you do what you do well, and it's a form of developing a human cooperation, as plants and animals do every day. So that leads into what I call the micro-city model. Or I heard you call it the micro-society framework.
Yeah, because we're focusing more on the living together part.
Exactly.
Which is the basis of our being together, because of course you have a lot of examples where they build cities and nobody wants to live there. So what is it? That's just a bunch of bricks, isn't it? And so it's more like creating that vibrant living community where people want to live together, want to do business together. That means actually having an exchange, because what is business differently than people having an exchange about values they created? And yeah, a kind of new entrepreneurship model for the future. And I think that what you developed, is lithium coin, is a beautiful. That's something we need for the future, but it's not available right now, isn't it?
No.
It will come. It's developed, as I understood. It's
coded. It's developed. It is actually operating on a very mature platform, and my team is working together to do some critical acquisitions right now. And my intent is not to make it about deploying the Lydian coin or token, but actually aiding these community visionaries to empower them to begin to build these communities where we have cross interest in each other's well-being, and then use the token just as a method of bookkeeping and accounting, which has principally been around since way before Bitcoin ever came along, and is predominantly used by our modern banking system today. When Chase or one of the big banks moves money from one branch of this country to another, they're not moving money, they're moving digital representations or tokens. So we've had law in place for arguably almost 20 years, allowing for the banking of digital tokens back and forth. It's just been a closed system that you couldn't directly access.
So will we need banks when your system is running? That's a question a lot of people might ask who are listening to this interview.
Banks were established as a institution of trust. Okay? That's what a bank actually is. So we need institutions of trust. It's important. It's part of society. You need that reliability. Will you need bankers making subjective choices and decisions around things that affect you personally and financially? The answer to that is no. Mm-hmm. Because if we can effectively do a smart contract, that is a secure smart contract, mm-hmm. okay?
And we both have trust in it.
We both have trust in it.
There's no third party needed for that.
Exactly. Then when a widget gets sold and the accounting of that widget sale says, you know, Briony gets this and Mark gets this, it's automatic. Mm-hmm. No human had to go in there and check the ledger and make sure this got paid. Mm-hmm. So this is what happens when you have this rudimentary framework of virtually instantaneous settlement. Mm-hmm. Now you can apply different rules. Again, it's just a contract, it's just rules. Yeah. But rules can change and smart contracts can change. Yeah. If everybody agrees.
Yeah.
Pretty simple, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. From your perspective, pretty simple. I think people might have still a lot of questions. But so you're now building the exchange for that. That's what is needed as a next step to be able to exchange this coin into other currencies or other coins. And very curious.
Well, we're merging it in with things that people do every day, which is to, you know, use a credit card or, you know, have a digital wallet on your cell phone. Or my friend John Gregory had been building credit card size digital wallets for, I mean, he and I worked together on battery technology 16, 17 years ago. Mm-hmm. So this has been around for a long time. Mm-hmm. It's just now becoming viable to start to do some of this stuff. You should be able to go in, like to an Amazon store or to, you know, your local grocery store. And frankly, you should be able to buy something with your biometrics, your face and your fingerprint and your personal identification code, whatever you want.
Yeah, and some people will not like that idea that you everywhere has to be identified before you buy something.
Well, it's just in place of a physical card. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I like to swim, right? You know, I hate to have to carry my wallet and park it in the sand on the beach and have somebody come out and steal it, right? Mm. You can't steal your face.
Yeah.
And you're right. People, that's a personal choice.
Yeah.
Personal choice.
Yeah. So I think that, it's important to see also with you that technology is not only bad and threatening, but technology can be really helpful for the future. And it's like bringing nature and technology together. And maybe are you like somebody as a mathematician? How do you call that?
Mathematician.
Mathematician. I was thinking about magician.
I do have my card from the Magic Castle.
Okay. So, do you then see everything in numbers? Would you see that you calculate, wherever you look, or everything will be translated into numbers and codes?
For me, the universe is math. I've even developed what I call a new form of math. I call it Fibonacci math, which is actually more representative of the multidimensional world that we physically live in today. I look at, conventional Euclidean math as like the basics, right? But as an example, let's just take something as simple as pi. Pi is the ratio of the diameter of a circle to its circumference. And when you try to express pi in a base 10 numbering system, you can't express it. It ends up with this 3.145 blah, 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 long number, because it's not representation. So mathematicians will call those irrational numbers, okay? Well, however, pi is a fixed ratio of the circumference of a circle to diameter, okay? And it's not infinite, it's very finite, and it's definable. It's just that our base 10 Euclidean math system breaks. And of course, humans want solutions. So what we as mathematicians used to do, or still do for that matter, is we just make up things, and they express all these different patterns and things. But there was a very interesting mathematical discovery that I came across when I was working with a professor who had come up to Alaska and was talking about modeling like earthquakes and things along those lines. And he was using this three-dimensional ratio, which was broken down into a basic fundamental unit of a 3-4-5 triangle. Mm-hmm. And a 3-4-5 triangle is really kind of neat because a 3-4-5 triangle has a unit value of 1, unit value of 2 in the circle that fits in the center of it, a side of 3, a side of 4, and a side of 5. And so if you start expressing that 3-4-5 triangle as a single unit of value, mm-hmm. and then using that to add, multiply, divide, etc., mm-hmm. you end up with a whole new system of math. Origami artists actually express Fibonacci math in the folding of paper. Mm. And it solves a lot of very important problems, which include cryptography, which leads to the things that we do in the computer world. Yeah. Anyway, that's my 5-minute.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so I think it's clear that you look to the world in the sense of translating everything in numbers and codes. And it's important, we need those keys to create and build a new future. And I think when people probably will ask themselves, so what can we do? What can we do to take this forward? Because we want to, start with this new way of living, working, exchanging together. Can I just start with micro-societies, living together and applying then, which makes the new groundwork ready for receiving this new financial system?
So, just my opinion, I believe that, and I mean, at this particular point, I'm seeing hundreds of these units of people out creating eco-villages and other things all over the globe.
Yeah.
It's truly amazing, the number of I mean, before the or when I first started doing Babcock Ranch, which was 2006, it was still reasonably rare. It was kind of esoteric. People were thinking, oh, no, that's communism, or that's, my God, this is capitalism 101, actually. Micro-societies are just simply more efficient, more competitive forms of capitalism, period, end of statement. When people work together and remove the conflict, we get more done for a lower cost, which means that we have a better product. It's really that simple. Here's what I tend to constantly give advice to people that are doing these kind of projects. Mm-hmm. Take yourself out of the burden of ongoing legacy debt in the way that you financially structure your home, your business, your community, all these kind of things. You think about it for a second. If you were to go borrow some money from the bank for your home and you pay that money back, you expect to own your home. Mm-hmm. The problem with most of these micro societies and eco-villages is they tie themselves into this ongoing equity that is no longer participating in the value. So what I recommend, and the way that I go about this, is I work to collect the value in a way that we can put a bond around it together, something that is a debenture that the banks can understand. And the investors can understand, because they know if they put $1 million in, that they're going to get $1 million back plus their interest in return. As opposed to putting, this is, and by the way, this is actually what happens today. I put $1 million in, I want to get $1 million plus the interest back, and I'm going to take equity in your company. What's wrong with that picture? Okay? I mean, equity in an operating company comes from the vision, the imagination, the creativity, and the day-to-day rolling up your sleeves and getting things done. An investor who invests money should get their money paid back, and they should make a profit in it. But that's where it stops. So if you can build your eco-village or your micro-society and stick to a form of how do I develop my community and work my way out of a debt burden, then you've solved the beginning of the problem.
Okay, that's a very good advice. I think everybody will take that into account. So I'm so happy to have been able to do this interview and to be here in Halifax, Canada, and soon you will be in the US. So it's good that we were here and in this transit time. And yeah, surely we'll when there's any questions, people can ask it, of course, and build further the new future. That's the most important part. And even if you don't know how, you just start.
One step in front of the other.
Yeah, and then every step opens new doors, new possibilities, new people come and where you can connect with. So we're living in this magical world of numbers, codes, and life experiences.
We are. Well, thank you very much. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And so, Mark, you developed a lot of things in the past, isn't it? You worked on a lot of apps we're currently using, isn't it? Maybe you can give a little bit explanation so people have some background about you, where you come from. Why do you feel called to develop this financial system?
So, yes, thank you. I had an extraordinary youth. My sister and mother and I decided to, break out of Washington and go out for an adventure. And we ended up in Fairbanks, Alaska. It was a remarkable place to grow up. Alaska is, and I've traveled the world, Alaska is not like any other place I've actually ever been. The ability to, and the opportunities in Alaska, because they're so sparse of population and such a large area of natural resources, as well as extremes in weather, gave me an opportunity to do many things. As literally a teenager, I think I was 17 in 1968 when Neil Armstrong first stepped on the moon. I had a first-class radio telephone license with broadcast endorsement. So the local radio TV station hired me immediately. And I got that chance as a high school kid to run a live board of the first landing on the moon. I mean, that was just exciting.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I am a technologist. I started building computers in my basement electronics shop with my stepfather and brother back in, the mid-'60s. And it gave me some extraordinary insight into how valuable this technology actually was, but also, more importantly, how vulnerable it is. So over the years, eventually I got, after the pipeline, I got a chance to go to work for Motorola Communications. And Motorola was just establishing itself with a new, what's called trunk radio environment. And they needed somebody who actually understood this to step up. We had serial number 5 being installed in the Fairbanks North Star Borough, up on Barrow, the uppermost ridge of Alaska. And boy, talk about challenge. Can you imagine putting the world's most leading edge communication technology in a rural Alaskan village up along the Arctic Sea? I mean, that was extraordinary. That gave me some remarkable opportunities. It gave me some insight and ended up allowing me to work with Motorola's lead development group. And literally in my first year with Motorola, I rewrote the protocols and we created something called SmartNet 2, which, to give you a short span, it eventually led to the Nextel network, which remember the old push-to-talk phones we had running around. But then came the advent of two-way paging and those kind of things. And I put a proposal together for Motorola, and I said, I want to take and demonstrate how we can build text and data messaging live over the early cellular, which was back in the analog days, and this new digital technology that we had with the SMRs. And it led to a prototype that we built, and I put it up in Anchorage, Alaska. And we invited the engineering team from Schaumburg to come up, and they fell in love with this thing. I was doing, live data over a laptop in a van driving down Anchorage, Alaska streets. Everybody was very impressed with that. That eventually became what historically is known as the Artist Network, which blew up nationally very quickly. I later got involved in the Iridium network, which is the satellite constellation, which is the first version of a low Earth orbit satellite constellation, not even close to the expanse that Mr. Musk is building today with the Starlink. But it was an extraordinary vision. And I got the opportunity, I was involved, I wrote the protocols between the satellite constellations so they could talk to each other, which is still in use today. And as a matter of fact, I found that the Musk network, the laser network, are actually using a modern version of the protocols I wrote for the Iridium network to talk between satellites, which is kind of cool to know. But then what began to happen is things in Alaska were growing. Motorola was shifting, and it became clear to me that I needed to move from Alaska to the States in order to do something really remarkable. And I had an offer from a company that I helped build their cellular infrastructure in Alaska to come in and run their engineering and other teams, a company called Sterling Cellular. And we did. As a matter of fact, in retrospect, I took a look once, and we probably built out 25% of the country's rural cellular network during those early days. And that was an extraordinary opportunity. We ended up selling the company to AT&T, and I ran off and started building more things. Eventually, make a short story, got wrapped up with a company called Frontier, headed their new product development and engineering framework. We built the nation's first OC-192 optical network in partnership with a couple of other carrier companies. And I mean, that at the time, that was so fast that even Cisco didn't have port capacity to handle that kind of speed. So yeah, it's been extraordinary. I later, when they got sold to Global Crossing, I was recruited by the Marriott family to come on board their little startup company out in Utah, and we built the first voice over IP network company on the planet. And
my father worked in voice over IP also.
Excellent.
In the first, I think in the Swift period. Then, just before the crash.
Oh, before the crash. Okay, well, that was way after this. This was 1998, I think, if I remember. We turned the network on.
A little bit later.
Yeah, but so the session-initiated protocol, which everybody talks about, came from a computer science group out of Columbia University, and a couple of my engineers and myself got permission. We worked with the lead out of the university, and in one weekend, actually, I rewrote SIP protocol, period. And in partnership, the idea was to make that an open published standard so that computers and applications and devices could all talk to each other. And it did. It became a standard. I know that some product managers at Cisco and Nortel and all the big companies that were hoping to build their proprietary voice solutions probably were really pissed at me for releasing that technology into the open. But it was important not to take ownership of something so important to the world.
This interview is part of the Societies for the Future Network project, where we imagine and co-create together the societies for the future. Share this interview with your friends and connect with like-minded pioneers and experts on the worldwide platform societiesforthefuture.org.